Welcome, folks, to another exciting, invigorating masterclass episode of the Lynam podcast. Today, we are talking about the worst movies of 2017. You know, I tried to avoid watching a lot of bad movies this past year, and for the most part, I think I did pretty good. There's a lot of shit I didn't go see. I did not subject myself to the new Transformers. There was a lot of stuff that I saw that came out that I was just like, no, I refuse to watch it because I know what it's going to be. It's going to be god-awful. Unfortunately, I did take a chance on certain things. Or, well, I guess fortunately for you, maybe. I don't know. If there's an upshot to this, it's that you have to watch bad movies to understand filmmaking as a whole, to learn from the mistakes of others, and to constantly improve yourself as a creator, or, improve what type of content you like to watch. So, of course you're going to watch some stinkers throughout the course of a year. It's just bound to happen. But, hopefully this list will help you steer clear of some of these and make some more informed decisions. I got a lot of different movies on the list. Some of them I saw in theaters, others I just, happened to watch at home. But I managed to sit through all of them, so that says something about them, I guess. I managed to hold my attention enough to where I could at least finish them. But then again, it's not really a compliment. It's not a compliment. So to kick things off right away, this movie came at the tail end of last year. It was The Snowman, which is a Michael Fassbender cop mystery thriller. It's based off of a book. It's a series of books, okay? I guess I think it's Swedish or Norwegian. I can't remember. But they're really popular books. They've been on the New York bestseller list. And it's about a detective whose name is Harry Hole. I don't even know if I really need to say more other than that. I'm going to, but first of all, the detective's name is Harry Hole. And so he's supposed to be like the leading world's greatest detective. It's kind of supposed to have like a Hannibal vibe to it, or like The Bone Collector, any of these like mid to late 90s thriller movies, like even like Seven and stuff like that. But the weird thing is that the book that this is based off of, I guess it's like the 7th or 8th book in the series. So at this point, the story that's been adapted, this character's already been established in multiple books before this, so you understand his personality, where he's been, and where he's kind of going. And from the movie, there's not really a whole lot of context. What the plot boils down to is Michael Fassbender's character, Harry Hole. I don't think I'm going to be able to say that without laughing. He is like this kind of washed up genius detective who's really good at solving murders, but he's an alcoholic. When you're first introduced to him, he's literally like passed out on a fucking park bench in the middle of winter, just sleeping off like some whiskey or something. He's trying to get more cases so that he doesn't get fired, but he can't find anything that appeals to him. And then he starts to draw these connections between a recent string of murders and finds out that there's a new serial killer walking the streets. He gets paired up with a new partner, who's this woman. She's like a young rookie cop, and she really, looks up to him, but he kind of just doesn't want anything to do with her. And so this series of murders is perpetrated by this killer that's the Snowman Killer, because he kills people and then he builds a snowman. That's the whole he builds a snowman outside of their house after he kills them, or before he kills them. He builds snowmen. That's his whole gimmick. That's it, basically. There's just so much wrong with this movie. Michael Fassbender just kind of phones it in the entire time. He just doesn't care. I would say that he probably cared even less about this movie than he cared about Assassin's Creed. And that was one of the worst movies of 2016. So, that's really not helping the case. Like, I think Michael Fassbender is a fantastic actor when he's in the right stuff. He's a really enjoyable guy to watch. I think he's very good at what he does. But he really, he knows how to pick some stinkers. And this movie, the big thing is that it was very clearly trying to emulate the success of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and kind of try and ride the wave of that popularity, even though the remake of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo came out quite a few years back now, and it wasn't that bad. The original movies for that series were fantastic, But, you know, like the hype for those has kind of died down. That interest in that's kind of fallen off the radar. I don't think anybody gives a shit about seeing another Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie after this. And so trying to kind of fill that niche, not the smartest idea. And that's really what The Snowman tries to do. You know, the cinematography was actually really beautiful, but it's kind of hard not for it to be when you've got such an amazing landscape at your disposal. That was not the problem with the film. You know, it's competently shot. I will say that. My big problems with this movie were everything else. Literally everything else in this movie was horrible. The pacing is just off. We never understand any of the characters. We never get to really care about them in any sense. There's a ton of ridiculous plot twists throughout this movie, and one that's just blatantly obvious: the identity of the snowman. It just so happens that this guy is some deranged serial killer because his dad was an asshole to him when he was a kid. Something about like eugenics or something. I can't remember exactly what happened because I just kind of tuned it out. Oh yeah, he goes and he kills women he kills like single mothers. And so it just so happens that he's dating Harry Hole's ex-girlfriend who's a single mother. So he's slowly trying to work his way up to killing her. And I don't know if he starts relationships with all these women. I think he just happens to be in a relationship with this woman, is planning on killing her later on down the line. But the other women he kills, he just does it because he can. So that's the main plot, is that it's Michael Fassbender's character chasing this guy down, trying to figure out what his MO is, who the guy is. And I honestly think that his partner was a little bit more enjoyable to watch, and they just fucking kill her like halfway through the movie. She tries to set a trap to lure the guy in, the serial killer in, and then he just fucking kills her. And that's it. Like, it's not even very clear that he kills her at first. She sets a trap, he shows up, and then the next thing you see, she's in a fucking car. It's her body in a car. But they don't have a funeral for her or anything. And don't say, oh my God, I can't believe she's dead. It's just like, oh, here's her dead body for 2 seconds. All right, moving on. And up until that point, she played a very vital role. There was no fucking payoff for that. So she essentially just chewed up half the screen time and then died. So that was a big problem with this film. Another really, really big problem is Val Kilmer is in this film. Look, I don't want to laugh, okay? It's not funny, but it kind of is. So the thing is that Val Kilmer, you know, he had throat or jaw cancer. He had some type of cancer very recently. And so he's been out of the spotlight because he's been battling that, and it seemed like he was never going to act again. And so he came back in this movie. It's very clear that he's had, you know, some surgeries or chemotherapy and stuff, because he does not look like Val Kilmer. He looks really fucked up. His face is puffy and red. He looks like death. It's pretty sad to see. But what makes it funny to me, I'm trying to find the best way to put this. It's not funny because of the way he looks and everything like that. I think it's good that he's getting back out there and trying to do his work again. But there was no reason for him to be in this movie, because literally every single scene that he's in, I don't know what happened in production. Maybe his voice was just really weak or something, but they decided to fucking ADR all of his dialogue. And it's extremely obvious. ADR is when you record voiceover over a scene to make it match, you know, or it's basically just any dialogue that you record in post-production that goes over a film. Bane, Darth Vader, those characters are all ADR. It's basically there to fix mistakes or create characters whose voices you obviously can't replicate during production. And Val Kilmer, they didn't even match up his dialogue with his mouth movements. You know, it looks like a fucking... It was like watching like an old fucking Godzilla movie dub. You know, you think that maybe he was speaking Norwegian or something. Like, I don't know what the fuck happened. But it's so distractingly bad that it pulls you completely out of the movie. Any semblance of interest or intrigue, any realism that the movie had, is just given a huge fucking gut punch the minute he starts talking. And his character clearly was supposed to have a bigger arc. He's this detective that was investigating the same case before Michael Fassbender's character came along, and it destroyed him. And that's kind of an interesting plot point, but they chopped up his scenes. He maybe gets 8 minutes of screen time, maybe, and he's just grumbling. He's going Like, you can't understand what he says. It doesn't match up with how his lips are actually moving. And it's clear that, whoever edited this shit together was just like, this is not gonna work. How the fuck do I fix this? And he essentially was just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna cut these scenes down to like 1 or 2 minutes and then intercut them, and hopefully this will work out. Let's just change completely what he said, the dialogue, so that it still fits in. It's a testament to how fucking bad this movie is, though, because the director of the film came out before the movie even released and said, oh yeah, we didn't fucking finish the movie. We were on a time crunch and all this stuff, and we had to scramble to get all this stuff done. It sucks. Like, the dude just came out and said, it sucks because I couldn't finish the movie. Don't release the movie then. I know you're gonna take a hit. I know the studio's gonna take a hit, but don't release a fucking movie if it's not done. Or if you know it's gonna be fucking garbage. You already lost the money. It doesn't help your reputation any. It doesn't help the reputation of anybody in the fucking movie. And it's just, it was a bad movie. Case closed. On the Snowman. It was horrible. There's so much more I could go into, but I've already talked about this fucking piece of shit for 15 minutes. There's so many different movies from so many different genres. That's part of the reason why I like the worst list. The next movie on the list is Fist Fight. I knew that this movie wasn't going to be good. I knew The Snowman wasn't going to be good from the trailers. I knew this movie wasn't going to be good from the trailers. Fist Fight has Charlie Day and Ice Cube, and it's about two teachers that don't get along, and so they decide that they're gonna, fucking duke it out at the end of the school day. Of course, Charlie Day, his character is a little bitch, and he doesn't want to fight. And Ice Cube really wants to fight. That's the entire premise of the movie. If it was in more competent hands, maybe I could see this being a lot funnier. Ice Cube in this film just overacts. He's gotten past the point of being, really intimidating. Okay, you can't, put Ice Cube in this box of being, this badass dude that's gonna kick your fucking ass after he's been in Are We There Yet? It's not gonna happen. I refuse to believe it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that every joke in this film kind of lands flat. It's not the worst comedy I've ever seen. It's certainly a lot better than something like Office Christmas Party. But it's a nothing movie, It's everything. You're gonna forget everything about this fucking movie. Jillian Bell from Workaholics, she shows up in the movie and she's like a meth head who happens to be a teacher, but she's like a secret meth head. And her whole joke is just that she's weird and she does drugs, but she doesn't want to admit that she does drugs, but she does admit it all the time. It's just stupid shit like that. The only vaguely funny scene in this film is Charlie Day's kid in the movie has a dance recital that she wants to do. And so she's been practicing it with her dad for months on end and everything. And then she says, hey, I want to do this different dance routine. And she decides that she's going to do it to a Big Sean song. That one that's like, "Little stupid ass bitch, I ain't fucking with you." And, she's in elementary school, so she's dancing to that. That's the whole joke. It's just lazy shit like that. It's a lazy movie. The titular fist fight happens at the very end of the movie, of course. And it goes on for 20 minutes. And it's just kind of bland and dull. It's weird to see a lot of slapstick. And yet this is, a lot of the stuff in this movie was just slapstick jokes. There's a scene where Charlie Day gets dragged around by a horse in the middle of school. I think there's some mini prank war going on. He tries planting drugs on Ice Cube. Charlie Day's not a bad actor. I don't think he's a bad writer. I know that he's done some writing. I don't know why he picked this project. The Horrible Bosses movies were okay. I feel like they're at least a little bit more memorable than this. Maybe the first one more so than the second one. But Fist Fight, it was pointless. It was a very pointless movie. And it's just not funny enough to justify sitting through it. That's all I can say about that one. I don't know what else to say, because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, the movie was just fucking stupid. Really just low brow, without anything being clever. And, I like to watch a lot of movies that are just comically dumb. But they know that that's what they're selling. And this movie was trying to do so many different things, and it just didn't succeed at any of them. It tries to be a story about family and friendship and teachers sticking up for each other, and it falls flat in every single instance. It's just not a good. It's bad. It was bad. The next one I want to talk about, this one actually kind of bums me out a little bit because I was hoping that this was going to be good, is Power Rangers. Now, a lot of these movies that make it onto my horrible list, I usually just can't fucking stand them. Power Rangers is a little bit different because that franchise holds a special place in my heart because that's one of the first things that I started watching as a kid was Power Rangers. I have a deep affinity for it. I watched that show all the fucking time. It was one of the first movies that I ever saw in theaters when I was a kid, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, where they're fucking skydiving with snowboards and then they land and they're rollerblading, and it's just like super 90s, the one with Ivan Ooze. And I loved it. I loved the cheesiness of it. I loved that it was just dudes doing karate and fighting monsters, and they had badass robots. And that's what Power Rangers should be. Now, the reason why the Power Rangers remake was disappointing is because this film does not really understand what makes Power Rangers great. It doesn't appreciate how ridiculous the franchise is as a whole. They took this more like Breakfast Club kind of vibe where all the Power Rangers meet while they're like in detention. Well, a couple of the Power Rangers meet while they're in detention, and then there's like a bunch of weirdos kind of strung throughout that they encounter at this quarry and stuff. So it's just like a group of losers that have almost nothing in common learning to become a team, which I have no problem with. I thought that material actually worked pretty well, but that's a good 75-80% of the movie. It's literally them accidentally discovering this cavern, getting their power coins, and then learning how the hell to become Power Rangers. So it's just these scenes where it's a bunch of kids arguing with each other about stupid shit, and then some training montages. And then we get 10 minutes of Power Ranger action. So that structure just does not work. They wanted to build this out and make a, fucking 7-movie, 8-movie franchise. Do a Power Rangers movie every year like Transformers. And there's no way in hell it's happening now because it tanked at the box office. But it's really hard to see, how it would have succeeded with the way that they did this. Because when you're going to go see a Power Rangers movie, even if you're an adult, the main reason you're going is to see the Power Rangers fucking do their thing. And they don't do their thing in this movie, man. They literally have one fight scene that's on a cliff for 2 seconds, and then they get in giant robots and they bitch slap Rita Repulsa across the world. That's the entirety of the fights. It's training montages, one fight with the putties on a cliff, they're in some fucking robots, the robots fuse together, they bitch slap Rita Repulsa. That's all of it. That's already bad enough. But what makes it worse is that they didn't introduce Tommy at all. They only hint at him for a sequel, which isn't gonna happen. And Tommy is the ultimate fan favorite character. He's been around since the fucking first season. He's gone 28 million seasons or however many seasons he's on. He's been in almost all the fucking versions of Power Rangers in some form or another. So that's a big thing. The next thing is that this movie is just an extended ad for Krispy Kreme donuts. What? Are you shitting me right now? Krispy Kreme donuts. They're not bad donuts, but really, you're gonna have a running joke about this, unstoppable energy or whatever the hell is built directly under a Krispy Kreme. Then you have Rita Repulsa go into a Krispy Kreme and order donuts, and every other fucking word out of somebody's mouth towards the end of the movie is Krispy Kreme. It's just blatant product placement. It's very overt and it's very obvious, and it's just a cash grab. And Lionsgate, how the fuck did they get the Rice's property if they're not going to treat it with any respect? Even if it is just a stupid show about fucking ninjas in ridiculous armor fighting weird monsters from other dimensions and shit. I'm not saying to take it seriously, I'm saying to treat a property with respect. It's selling people on those things that made it enjoyable in the past. That's why Transformers works for a lot of people. I personally hate those movies, but I can at least kind of understand why people like them, because it's just a bunch of robots fucking fighting. And then there's a little bit of story peppered in there, but mainly you're going to see your favorite robot square off against your other favorite robots. Not that difficult. Really not that difficult to toss in a fucking sequence where, the Power Rangers are fighting somebody other than some fucking CGI rock monsters. where they're actually utilizing their karate abilities and shit. Super duper easy. So yeah, it was disappointing because I would much rather see 30 Power Rangers films pop up in the theaters than Transformers. But it's just not gonna happen. I don't know how the hell they're gonna bring this back. Honestly, they should have just looked at what Adi Shankar did when he produced that bootleg for Power Rangers, because that was the most badass thing. He knew that the series was ridiculous, and whoever sold that concept to him really understood what a Power Rangers movie should probably look like in this day and age, where it's just like, basically they take the Power Rangers and turn them into a bunch of disillusioned child soldiers. And maybe that's a little bit extreme for a mainstream movie, but I think it would have worked a lot better than whatever the fuck this was. The next movie I have on the list was Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell is, of course, an adaptation of the classic anime, influenced The Matrix, for God's sake. And The Matrix became one of the most influential things of all time. So you know that there was something special about Ghost in the Shell. Unfortunately, they decided that they were just going to make this a big blockbuster starring vehicle for Scarlett Johansson, strip out all the nuance and things that make Ghost in the Shell actually interesting, and just blast it with fucking CGI in the face until something pops out. And what popped out was just a generic, fucking boring slog. Ghost in the Shell, every single fucking action sequence in this film was spoiled by the trailers. Every action sequence is poorly choreographed. Or, well, I'm not even gonna say it's poorly choreographed. They're over before they even start, really. So something really insane looks like it's about to happen, and then the Major does like 2 moves and then it's all over. The super like cyberpunk futuristic, the set design and stuff, and just the overall art direction behind the movie is fine. I think it works pretty well. That's you gotta sell that part to make a successful Ghost in the Shell movie. The big problem with it, though, is that it completely changes what Ghost in the Shell is about to make it more American and dumb it down for audiences, when I think it's a pretty straightforward story. The original Ghost in the Shell is about somebody navigating their way through life and discovering who they are. What makes a person, it's like, are you more man or machine at a certain point? And, if you are more machine, then, how would you know? Different stuff like that. Like, what is existence? Like, deep philosophical questions. And this movie instead focuses on, it goes completely the opposite. It's like, instead of figuring out who you are and doing what you want to do with your life, fucking Scarlett Johansson's character, the Major, she decides, I really need to know about my past life and embrace my past life, instead of accepting who I am now and kind of learning how to live with that. And that it's just completely antithetical to the premise of the original Ghost in the Shell. It doesn't work, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and it's basically just a plot thread that they tried to shoehorn in there to continue the story for another 2 or 3 movies. And this is the thing I'm going to hammer on a lot about with this fucking list too, is that every single goddamn movie these days wants to create this massive cinematic universe and shit. Focus on making a good story first. Focus on making something coherent and memorable. Don't make a fucking cash grab movie and then plan for 30 fucking sequels that nobody wants to watch. It's really not that tough. Make a self-contained fucking story arc, and then if you have to, you can hint a little bit at the end of where it might go next, but don't have like a fucking wink and nod and go, okay, well, we gotta start a task force to take down what's his fucking face. And like how the people stare at the camera and it's like, the Major will be back and Ghost of the Shell 2 Resurrection. No, I don't fucking care. Nobody cares. We want to watch a good movie, and you basically making a 2-hour advertisement for 3 other movies does not work. And as far as the whitewashing controversy goes, it's fine. I don't think that people should be that offended by it. I'm sure that they could have found an Asian actor to play the Major, but at the same time, they explain it in the movie that she, her character was fucking experimented on and killed, and they extracted her brain from her body and put it in a body that they made. So they put her brain in a white person. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Okay, like Scarlett Johansson makes money. Lucy was garbage, but she still managed to bring in the ticket sales for that. So, of course, they were like, well, slap Scarlett Johansson in here because this movie's fucking garbage. I know it's not going to go anywhere. So don't watch Ghost in the Shell. Just go watch Blade Runner instead. The art direction doesn't make it worth it. It's not worth wasting 2.5 hours or however long Ghost in the Shell is. So Netflix actually makes 2 appearances on this list with their original movies, which somehow they still can't get a grasp on, regardless of all the talent they have, regardless of all the skill and prestige they have making limited series, TV series that are super watchable and enjoyable. You know, Stranger Things and Defenders and a bunch of other stuff made my list of best TV, but you know, they really have got to fix the way they do their original movies because it's just not working. The next movie that I'm going to talk about is actually one that I did do a review on. It's The Discovery. The Discovery was a film that had a lot of recognizable, fairly famous people in it. It had Jason Segel, it had Robert Redford, it had Rooney Mara, and it had Jesse Plemons in it. It even had a pretty interesting premise. It's about this guy whose father is this prestigious scientist who finds out what actually happens after people die. And that's an interesting premise. But the director, Charlie McDowell, decided that he was going to turn this into this romance flick instead of being like a light sci-fi kind of drama. And Rooney Mara and Jason Segel don't have any chemistry. So that's already a big factor in, you know, not really giving a shit about this movie. But you know, there's just so much wrong with it that, you know, I can't even begin. I don't know where to start. In this world where people found out that there's an afterlife, they start killing themselves. And then it's later revealed that when you kill yourself, you actually come back to life in an alternate dimension and you're kind of forced to relive moments from your life. And so the whole movie is built around this mystery of, well, what really happens after you die? And it's this crazy death cult. That stuff, kind of interesting. And then they just go, okay, well, just fucking kidding. This guy is in love with this girl. He's gonna kill himself over and over and over again until he can get it right and, you know, fall in love with her properly. Blending sci-fi and romance, not impossible. In fact, a wonderful alternative to this movie is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It deals with a lot of very similar elements, you know, that fucking up and then trying over and over again type of thing. But that movie works because it comes straight out and says, you know, hey, this is a love story. Whereas this film doesn't know what the fuck it wants to be until like the final like 40 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. It's like, so there's all this build up and all this tension and stuff, and then it's just like, oh, here we go. Just here's this fucking weak romance subplot. You can't base your entire story and sell your entire story on one thing and then just completely pull the rug from under people. Even Charlie McDowell's previous movie before this one was a lot better. He also directed The One I Love, which is a film about these two people that are it's another movie that's in a similar vein. It's two people that are in love with each other, but their relationship is kind of strained, so they go to this cabin for a weekend. It turns out that there's doppelgangers, like there's a guest house and there's a main house, and the doppelgangers live in the guest house, and they're like fabrication, they're these like weird shape-shifting people that take on the personalities of other people, and you know, they have to trap. It's complex, but it's interesting. Again, a lot of the same themes are there, but the difference is that they actually work in that film. In The Discovery, it feels like Charlie McDowell wanted to branch out and do something different. And he goes, well, it worked for my other movie. May as well just, toss this little subplot in here. Maybe it'll make this fresh. But I fucking hated it, man. And it tries to be a little bit lighthearted at times and stuff. Doesn't go very well into the mechanics of this fucking weird, like, death cult. Just so much wasted potential for something. To the point where one of the shows that I really disliked that Netflix put out, it made me appreciate a lot more. It was a lot like the OA, but the OA at least established itself as this super quirky and kind of weird thing dealing with the afterlife and stuff like that. And this just, it's not a cohesive narrative. It's just not fun to watch. It's a slog. None of the actors have a lot of chemistry, and a lot of them are wasted here. So I did not enjoy that one. Do not watch The Discovery. I don't care if you have a Netflix subscription. It's like $10 a month for Netflix, but your time is more valuable than watching this fucking piece of shit. The other Netflix movie I'm going to get to later, but it's going to be the last on the list because I could do an entire podcast episode of just about that one. And I'm more than likely going to do a review on it, so I'm going to try and keep that one brief. Next up on the list is King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Guy Ritchie, man, you know, what happened to you? Why? Why is this a thing? Why is King Arthur, Legend of the Sword a thing? Who thought it was going to be successful? What is there to say about King Arthur, Legend of the Sword other than it's garbage? It's a cinematic train wreck in a lot of ways. It's unoriginal. It's very base level. It's not creative at all. What Guy Ritchie did is he took the core elements that made his Sherlock Holmes movies fun, and he tried to apply that to King Arthur, which possibly could have worked if Charlie Hunnam was not King Arthur and Jude Law was not the main villain. Casting for those two was just atrocious. That's a really important thing to note. Charlie Hunnam is not a great leading man. I think that he is okay in certain doses. I liked Sons of Anarchy. Pacific Rim was okay, but he really just does not have the screen presence to carry a movie about some fantastical shit like King Arthur. And he always puts on an accent all the time. He's actually British, but he usually does an American accent. In this film, he actually has a British accent, but I'm pretty sure it's not his actual accent. I'm pretty sure he puts on a different accent to sound like King Arthur. And it's just like, I don't like seeing these films where they take like classic story tales, pretty much anything that's in the public domain, and then they just try to make it like really gritty for some fucking reason. So instead of, Arthur just being this guy that's always wanted to be a knight, he's a scrappy kid that grew up in a brothel, and he beats the shit out of people in fight clubs for fun. And he's a little rascal, he's a little rascally guy. And his Knights of the Round Table are a bunch of little fucking skeevy dudes that like to pull scams, and basically they do like slip and falls and shit. Like they're like con artists. And it doesn't make any sense. It does not work. The whole point of the story of King Arthur is about somebody that's from a place of low means, but has a good heart, rising up and becoming one of the most powerful people in the land and making the world a better place in general. And this movie did not sell that. They tried to make him more of like Robin Hood or something like that. Arthur has no redeemable qualities in this movie, really, other than he's a fighter. That's not enough. That's not enough to base your character solely around that one trait of him being scrappy and he's the underdog. Really? You gonna give him a little bit of fucking characterization, a little bit of heart? You could just sit here all day and list off stupid fucking movies like this. It's like Snow White and the Huntsman. It's like that really bad Robin Hood movie that Ridley Scott directed. It's like Noah. It's one of these things that nobody asked for. And it's another one of these movies where they thought a big franchise was going to come out of it. I even talk about this in my Justice League review, how they clearly set it up to have like 7 or 8 sequels or some ridiculous shit that are not going to happen. And so it's an origin story for a character that nobody really cares about in the first place, with none of the recognizable elements. It just falls flat in every respect. CGI is bad. I was actually in LA with a group of friends when I saw this movie, and we watched a bootleg copy of it. So that didn't really help matters, but I'm glad I didn't see it in a theater, because I would have left. probably halfway through. Like King Arthur has some power to fucking slow down time or something whenever he has his sword. Whenever he has Excalibur, he can slow down time and kind of like pinball between people. Which is kind of an interesting concept, you know, that the sword is so powerful, it's so magical that he has these like superhuman abilities. But that kind of undermines him as a character and what makes King Arthur special in the first place. And the effect is just jarringly bad. I swear, man, if you even look remotely close at the CGI, it looks worse than the Flash TV show. Every single time I saw one of those fight scenes, this popped into my head. My name is Arthur, and I grew up in a brothel and had to beat the shit out of everyone to get out alive. Now I have a really special sword and it gives me superpowers. I am King Arthur. I know that's stupid as hell, but it's true. It also does not help that the villain, he's completely CGI. Like Jude Law, he plays this dude that wears like these fucking like punk rock outfits and shit like that. But then like when he's like full on mega evil mode, he has like some magical armor that appears out of nowhere. It's very much like Wonder Woman in that regard. Like the CGI is about on par with that. Although I will say that his character design would have fit better in Wonder Woman than the final bad guy in that movie. Just a shame. And it's like, I know Guy Ritchie's better than this. I know he can do better than this. And the movie flopped at the box office, thank God, because I really could not sit through another one. And I probably would force myself to sit through another one just to see how bad it would be. Also, they just borrow a lot from other fantasy universes. They steal shit from Game of Thrones. Like, straight up, there's wargs in this. They're not called wargs, but they're wargs. And, like, magic just so happens to be this like ancient element that's kind of disappeared from the universe. Also like Game of Thrones, but slowly making a comeback. You know, it's not inventive at all. And there's so much better fantasy to watch. So I could not recommend this movie to anyone. And it doesn't tell you anything about King Arthur or the Knights of the Round Table. It's a prequel to an origin story. It's not even an origin. It's a prequel to an origin story. And King Arthur is not an active protagonist in this movie. Literally every single time somebody asks him to step up to plate or do something even remotely heroic, he goes, oh, no, fuck that. I'm not down with that. He throws away his fucking Excalibur like 5 times, I feel like. And then like every single time he picks it up and does something badass, he's like, I don't want to touch that sword ever again. But then somehow at the end of the movie, he's like, all right, I'm going to be the king now. Set up this fucking round table. Let's get this thing going. Did you even read the script a second time? Did you just write it and say, okay, that's fine? Because that's what it feels like. This is another movie that breaks my heart. Another one that makes me very sad that it wasn't good. And that is Alien Covenant. So here's the thing about Ridley Scott. I think that his heart is in the right place. I think that he is a pretty solid director. But the dude just kind of... he shouldn't be given nearly as much creative control as he has at this point. And you see that with a lot of these older directors. Spielberg and, you know, it was especially bad with George Lucas. You see it with James Cameron right now with him trying to make all these Avatar movies. You see it more and more where these guys have gotten to a point in their career where they're pretty much untouchable. They can do whatever the fuck they want because they've created such classic films, and it kind of gets their head a little bit. Alien Covenant is it's on another level of bad for Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott kind of relegated himself to making these sweeping epics for a long period of time, and most of those movies are not enjoyable. They're like my least favorite things to watch. You know, he's been making shit like Exodus, Gods and Kings, and different like pseudo-historical movies that are like 3 hours long, but really they're just like thinly veiled action movies. And so he decided to go back to the Alien universe, which I thought I was going to enjoy thoroughly. Honestly, I like Prometheus. I'm one of the few people that did like Prometheus. I understood it. I thought that it was pretty brilliantly paced, and it led enough to where you could kind of see where Alien comes in right after. It's like this thing plus this thing equals this thing, which is kind of the xenomorph, but it's not. That's what Prometheus set up. It's like a little math equation. It's like, okay, well, there's this black goo. The black goo exists to wipe out all life on Earth because humans are an abomination, because Space Jesus came down and seeded life for everybody. Humans don't know about the black goo, so they go to find their creators, but they just so happen to be a mistake, and the creators died before they were able to wipe out humanity. And our ability to explore the stars and everything like that ends up being this colossal mistake, and it proves that man has a little bit too much hubris and is not prepared for what comes next. Whereas Alien Covenant is a story about an evil gay robot. What? Yes. Alien Covenant is a story about an evil gay robot Michael Fassbender that happened to create the xenomorphs. Ugh, my brain just broke. It makes no sense. This movie makes no fucking sense. It feels like Ridley Scott wanted to do a course correction for Prometheus because he didn't know where to go next. And he didn't fully agree with everything that Damon Lindelof wrote for him. And so Ridley Scott goes, you know what, I'm just going to fucking rewrite this myself. I'm going to take it into my own hands. I'm going to work with some people and we're going to fix this. And so I'm going to focus on this fucking robot from the first movie. Essentially, David, Michael Fassbender's robot character from the first movie, we don't get any payoff to his and Shaw's story other. I really wanted to see Shaw and David land on the engineer homeworld and kind of realize how fucked up everything is and how screwed humanity is, and kind of, you know, anything else, and maybe getting a proper introduction to the xenomorph. What we got instead was like a 2-minute flashback that explains everything that should have been Prometheus 2 away. So it turns out David gets a ship and he goes to the Prometheus, or the fucking space jockey homeworld. And while he's on the ship, he just starts experimenting with the black goo and stuff. And he's like, oh, this is really, really fascinating stuff. I'm going to create the perfect being. I'm going to create super murder machine. And it's going to be awesome. And then he kills Shaw. Off screen, he just kills her and creates a xenomorph. And then he drops the black goo and kills everybody on the engineer planet. And then, you know, maybe a decade later, I don't fucking remember the timeline. It doesn't matter. What matters is all this shit happens. David kills the engineers. David kills Shaw. David kills whatever remained of Prometheus. Then some random fucking crew gets stranded on their way to a new homeworld and decides that they're going to land on this planet that seems like it's possibly habitable. When they're carrying a ship with all, a vast amount of human life trying to protect them and carry the species across the galaxy, these dumb motherfuckers go, oh, well, we got trapped in a solar storm. Let's go land on this fucking uninhabited planet that seems like it carries life, but there's nobody around. They go out there without spacesuits. They get infected by a virus, like little airborne particles that just go into your nose and create like protomorphs. I think that's what they're called, which are better than the xenomorphs. Okay, you need to know that they're better than the xenomorphs. And then they come across David, who goes, I've created the perfect life on Earth. Or I've created perfect life in the universe. Look at this. And then he kidnaps a dude and fucking straps a face hugger to his face, and then a xenomorph pops out. Folks, I gotta tell you that this scene should have been the most amazing fucking thing in history if they wanted to sell this as the origin story for the xenomorph. What it turned out to be was straight up the parody from fucking Spaceballs. I shit you not. Something about the lighting in this scene was so fucking bad, it looked like a movie parodying Aliens from the 80s. Okay, I literally saw the xenomorph pop out, fucking yawn, and then I thought he was gonna go, hello my baby, hello my honey, hello my ragtime girl. I swear to God, dude, it was fucking atrocious. It was just like, I was physically fucking tense when that happened. I was fuming angry. I wanted to spit on someone. And then it becomes a really shitty slasher movie at the end. For some reason, David also has this whole altercation with another robot fastbender whose name is like Evan or something. I don't know. It's fucking... It's another robot fastbender. And so he's trying to teach him how to be a crazy robot like him. And the only way that he could do that is by playing the flute and by kissing the other robot fastbender. And then they get in a fight. And then secretly, evil robot fastbender kills good robot fastbender and takes his place on the ship and vomits up a xenomorph egg. And now there's going to be 5 more movies about evil robot fastbender with his pet xenomorphs. I also just want to take a moment to point out, I know I called him evil gay robot fastbender. I don't know if he was actually gay. I just thought that sounded way more hilarious. But evil gay robot fastbender is on a whole other level. And there's nothing wrong with being gay. There's nothing wrong with being an evil robot. There's nothing wrong with being Michael Fassbender. But when you put them all together, they make something truly bad. This character sucks. David is horrible. What the fuck, man? How do you ruin a franchise that's been around this long? What is it, 40 years? How long has Alien been around? Since 1979? You're really gonna do this? You're really gonna take an entire franchise and just shit all over it? Now we need more explanation as to how the xenomorphs got onto LV-426, which we didn't really need before. Now, instead of the xenomorphs just being these malevolent, dark creatures that we don't understand in any way and never, or possibly never could, just, an oddity of science, just happen to be out there in the vast unknown of space, they just happen to be created by a robot. And that fucking pisses me off. It pisses me off more than anything else on this list. Because you just tanked an entire franchise over vanity. You thought it was fucking cool. You wanted to make a story about fucking robots instead of these fucking creepy space creatures and this deep sci-fi universe that you built. I guess secretly, the Alien franchise has always been about androids and, how humanity is kind of garbage. But this is just taking it too far. If you wanted to make a movie about evil robots, then maybe you should have fucking done Blade Runner instead, you piece of shit. Okay, Ridley Scott? I want to see another one of your Alien movies at this point, man. I really don't. Now I know what it feels like for those people that saw Prometheus and didn't want to see another Alien movie after that. Because this one, it hit home for me, and I was furious when I walked out of that theater. I was mad. Fucking Fox scrapped Neil Blomkamp's Alien movie to make this. Neil Blomkamp was gonna bring back Sigourney Weaver, and he was gonna, he's gonna bring back everything that made the original movies great. He was gonna expand on it. He was gonna disregard a lot of the other movies, the awful Alien 3 and Resurrection and AVP. He was gonna get rid of all that. He was gonna have it be a sequel to Aliens, but it's set years later. And Neil Blomkamp has a very interesting style, and he could have made probably one of the best Alien movies. And instead they were just like, nah, fuck that, we're giving it to Ridley Scott because Ridley Scott's our boy. And Ridley Scott said, fuck Alien, I'm gonna make a movie about robots. It was disappointing, to say the very least. The next movie on the list is another horror movie, if you can classify Alien Covenant as that. This one is Flatliners, which I just saw maybe 2-3 weeks ago. Flatliners is a remake. It's about a team of medical students that stumble... I don't know why this shit fascinates me. It's about a team of medical students that are trying to push the limits and figure out if there's an afterlife. So very much like The Discovery or something like that. But it's a horror movie. So they figure out a way that they can kill themselves and flatline and bring themselves back. And when they flatline, they have these visions of various things that, happened in the past or might happen in the future. Eventually, everybody starts flatlining, killing themselves. Like, it's a group of 5-6 people. They all start killing themselves, bringing themselves back to life. And then they start getting haunted by visions of things that were from their past. Like their guilty conscience comes back, and they're hallucinating about it, and it's coming after them. It's like an evil spectral force or some shit. There's so many problems with this movie. The director, he's not an American director. He's a guy that actually directed the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It's funny, as the second appearance that's also made in this. He directed the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I love. I like that one a lot more than the American remake. And then he directed Dead Man Down with Noomi Rapace and Colin Farrell. It was okay, I guess. I don't know. It's not very memorable, but it wasn't like just atrocious. And this movie, you know, I don't know where the wires got crossed with this movie. It's got Ellen Page and Diego Luna and Kiersey Clemens. And Ellen Page is supposed to be the main character, but she isn't really. She's the first one to die in a movie where all the marketing revolved around her. I gotta be honest, the movie starts out interesting enough. You know, of course, them setting it up and going, oh my god, we've figured out that we can map what happens after we die. Like, we got to explore this and you know, do all this research, figure out what happens next. And then it just boils down to all these fucking people that are supposed to be getting their fucking PhDs and shit, about to become like actual practicing doctors. And then they just like, oh, we're gonna kill ourselves and party and fucking live forever. Woo! It just comes like a fucking party movie for some reason. And then it gets into the real horror stuff towards the end. But literally, like, what, 1 or 2 people die. That's it. And it's got one of those endings where it's basically, you know, I think the only person that fucking dies is Ellen Page. Ellen Page is the only person that actually dies in the movie. They write everything off. They're like, oh my god, there's this evil force that's chasing us and wants to kill us and, you know, bring us to hell or whatever, back into the afterlife. Who knows? They don't establish the rules of this universe. They never clarify what exactly this evil force is, except I guess it is just their guilty conscience, because once they make peace with the bad stuff they did in the past, then they just aren't gonna die. So it's like Final Destination, but an after school special, which just doesn't, it's not appealing. It's not interesting. All the characters are one-dimensional fucking cardboard cutouts. Ellen Page is just supposed to be the super driven lady who's a little bit grief-stricken by her sister's death. There's a guy who is just like a hardcore womanizer. There's a girl that just was like super stressed out about being a med student. There's a girl who's just dumb. That's her like only trait. She's dumb and she can swim. And then there's Diego Luna, who's really skeptical of all these other people killing themselves, but he still sticks around. He's always fucking scolding everybody about doing this shit, and he's like, oh, well, I'm here for you guys, but fuck you guys. That's his whole character. Diego Luna, you know, good on the guy. You know, just keep acting, man. Just don't do shit like this. Otherwise, your career is it's gonna be over real soon. But like I don't believe him as a med student, especially with his fucking ridiculous like straightened hair and shit. He's clearly older than like everybody else in the movie, and he's trying to play it like he's like this suave, cool guy that everybody wants in their lives, and it's just it's very cringeworthy. I wasn't expecting anything from Flatliners. I really wasn't. And I tell you, man, like, I really wish I didn't watch it because it just so fucking corny. The most corny horror film I've seen this past year. The next 2 films I'm going to go through really quick because the last 2 films got a lot to say about. It's actually a Matt Damon double hitter. A strikeout? I don't know. Well, I mean, you know, it's 2 outs. That's what it is. There's 2 bad movies with Matt Damon in them. I don't know sports references. Matt Damon was in both Suburbicon and Downsizing this year. Both movies have interesting premises. Both are, you know, competently made from a technical standpoint, but realistically, both of them fall flat on their fucking faces and real fast. Suburbicon was a script that had been floating around for quite a while. And it was originally written by the Coen brothers, and then it got workshopped and tweaked and everything like that. Probably been around for like a decade from what I've heard. And then George Clooney decided that he wanted to take it, or, you know, he wanted to make his directorial debut with it. The problem with Suburbicon for me was that it felt like a Coen brothers movie that they would have made over a decade ago, but they never got around to finishing it. And it kind of gets bogged down with a lot of nonsense. Just, it doesn't flow the way that it should, especially if the Coen brothers were to have made it. Kind of hard to describe as in terms of the actual genre, but I would say that it's like along the lines of a dark comedy. The whole movie is, it just feels like Fargo or Big Lebowski. Lots of incompetent characters trying to kill each other and things like that. Matt Damon, his character is a real asshole. He decides that he's going to kill his wife so he can get insurance money and so that then he can move in with her sister. And he keeps hiding it, and he won't pay the fucking guys that help him kill his wife. And then there's a subplot about segregation, and Matt Damon's character's son in the movie becomes friends with the little boy across the street who just happens to be, one of the first black kids in the neighborhood. That stuff, the relationship between the two little boys and their friendship sparking, I thought that was kind of an interesting little subplot to have in there. But in the grand scheme of things, it does not really fit in with everything else that's going on. Like, George Clooney tried to craft it to where, it's like, oh, there's this fucking crazy white dude that's destroying the neighborhood and bringing all this chaos in here, but all the people in the neighborhood are focused on this family right next door because they're black, and so there's this mass hysteria going on over there. Nobody really gives a shit that Matt Damon's killing people and bringing violence into their town and different things like that. On paper, sounds good. Execution, not so much. There was a better way to show it visually and just through actually weaving the fucking plots together instead of just kind of having the subplot of the segregation and stuff just kind of stapled onto the fucking side there. So that was a problem. There's some funny moments and stuff, but they all fall really flat. They just don't have the punchiness required. It's because George Clooney is an actor, man. Like, he hasn't directed anything before that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure this is his first movie that he's directed. And there's a big difference between being an actor and being a director. And he approached it from an actor's standpoint. That's the easiest way to sum that one up. If anything, it's one of the more disappointing movies of 2017. I don't know if it's a worse movie, but I feel like it warranted it enough to where, like, it could have been an amazing film if it was handled by the right people, whereas it's just kind of mediocre. The other one is Downsizing. Man, I was really disappointed by this one too, because this whole concept of people shrinking themselves down to live better lives and essentially combat climate change is kind of a funny premise. But it's another one of those things, like, it's the Discovery where it's like in this deep, like, sci-fi world. Clearly they spent a lot of time developing the concept of downsizing and all these different things, and it's really neat to watch that part of the movie. But the movie starts to fall apart really fucking quickly because about at the halfway point, maybe a little bit before that, we're introduced to this character who's this I think she's a Vietnamese woman, and this Vietnamese woman is a refugee. She was downsized by force and was in a TV box in a Target. It sounds really weird, I know, but so yeah, it's like this Vietnamese refugee who was forced to become, fucking 3 inches tall. And then Matt Damon, his character, falls in love with her. Then the story just goes off the rails. The biggest problem for me about this film was, again, that it had this interesting world. It doesn't really do anything with it, aside from telling this love story. And Matt Damon's character is super passive. He gets divorced after downsizing. And, I feel like the story should have been about this guy figuring out what his life is going to be about and literally getting a new perspective from being a fucking little 3-inch tall person. Instead, what I got is a movie about Matt Damon being sad that he divorced his wife, then a year later going and fucking a racist caricature of a Vietnamese person, and then saying fuck you to that Vietnamese person, I care about the environment, and then saying fuck the environment, I care about the Vietnamese person. It just felt super racist, and it was preachy, it's like it's this very specific type of preachy too, where it's clearly this, fucking wish fulfillment, like the director, I can't remember his name at the moment. It's the guy that did Sideways, but he always has this like tinge of like wish fulfillment. Is like, oh, marriage sucks. Let me go find out like a hot Asian chick that I think is hot, and that's gonna fix all my problems. And then it's like, oh, well, also I care about the environment. It's such a hot button issue. Gotta tackle that in this movie. Just like having a fucking agenda and a checklist and just going down and marking boxes, which is a real shame too, because the world of downsizing is interesting. It's funny to see, these communities sprouting up where all these people are miniaturized and seeing, like, they cut it out of the from the trailers, but there was a scene where they've got like a gigantic bottle of vodka and they're using it as a tap to, throw a party and stuff like that, and really playing with that world and literally like gaining a different perspective from being just in that world would have been interesting. Having a story about somebody that's going through all these problems and actually becoming a better person and not just relying on relationships to keep them going would have been a better option. It's such a shame too, because they kind of waste the cast. Christoph Waltz is in it, but he's not in it for super long, other than to literally be the bridge between Matt Damon and these other characters. He's just there for plot reasons when he should be a supporting character. The cinematography was really good too. Like, they did a really great job of making everybody, like, making it feel like it's a miniaturized universe. And I don't know if they actually did use miniatures for certain sequences or what. I'm sure they did. And like, it was really subtle, but they used a lot of high camera angles to make everybody look smaller. It was really clever how they shot a lot of the different stuff. It's kind of like Ant-Man in that regard. But I feel like it was more realized than Ant-Man, which makes it just so much worse that, this interesting premise just gets fucking bogged down by stupid shit. How tough is it to sit down and really invest in an interesting concept? How hard is it to, just expend a little bit more effort and step outside of your comfort zone? Instead, this guy just made another movie that's about a sad old white guy. And he could have still done that, but he could have, changed it up a little bit, could have tweaked how things went. And instead, no, it's just Matt Damon being mopey white guy who finds really racist character of an Asian chick. And it's super, I found it super offensive. She talks in broken English. It's like whenever you hear somebody do a bad Vietnamese accent, from like, it feels like a sketch comedy show skit, like Miss Swan from fucking Mad TV. It's like if they put Miss Swan in a fucking movie and said, okay, well, this is your romantic lead. That doesn't work. That's not, nobody wants to go to the theater to see that. God damn it. Downsizing. No. Boo. Obviously, I had to save the best of the worst for last. With these final two movies, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how long this is going to go on for. I'm going to try really hard to keep it short. But the first one that we're going to be talking about is Justice League. Oh, man. DC needs to really get their shit together. Thankfully, it sounds like they've been making some headway. They've completely changed, shook up their creative talent, kind of restructured WB as a whole so that they can make better movies in general, and pursue the right things. From what I've heard, that's what they're saying, at least. Do I believe it? No, not really. Justice League was the act of a production company that was desperate to really try and catch up to Marvel without having to put in any of the fucking legwork. And, of course, I feel like everyone saw this coming. Everyone knew that Justice League wasn't going to be as amazing as it should be. But I feel like Wonder Woman kind of gave everybody a false sense of hope that maybe they were going to start heading back in the right direction with these, DC films. I've already talked at length about why Suicide Squad and Justice League are bad. But I really just got to emphasize what a shit show this film was. It pains me to say it, but I honestly do believe that Justice League would have been a better film had Zack Snyder finished it, as opposed to bringing in Joss Whedon. Because all of the Joss Whedon elements stick out like a sore thumb. All of the reshoots are painfully obvious. I've already covered Mustache Gate in the Justice League review. Henry Cavill's CGI fucking face was the worst effect I've seen in probably a decade. And I watched Lawnmower Man like 2 years ago. So when your CGI is so jarringly bad that it can pull me out of a movie more than a movie from the 90s about virtual reality where the fucking main antagonist and it looks like the fucking old school PlayStation mascot, you know that there's a serious problem. Just waste his resources, just money being thrown at this fucking thing, trying to make it work. Scrambling to put together something and get it out to audiences because they want to strike when the iron is hot. But really, Justice League needed to be put back in the fucking oven for a little bit. It was half-baked, you know, maybe a little bit more time in the incubator, you know what I'm saying? The characters needed to be established so much better than they were. Like, we already know who Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman are. But unfortunately, at this point, there's a lot of people that go to these movies just because they're kind of curious and they don't know a lot about these characters. You know, The Flash, he probably should have had his own solo movie. Aquaman, and of course Cyborg. I think they all should have had their own solo movies before going into Justice League. At least one of them should have had a movie. So at least you would have, you know, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Wonder Woman. Then you have one or two movies to kind of get used to these characters and slowly introduce this threat in the background. And then you go into Justice League. You know, especially when you're trying to build a cinematic universe. They really needed to establish a lot of things. Instead of doing that and creating something memorable or interesting, they took a half-finished movie and they gave it to somebody whose style is completely different. Joss Whedon, he just did it for the paycheck, man. It's very obvious that he did it just for the paycheck. And it shows. The movie is just... It's a damn shame. It's a damn shame to see DC fall so far. Especially when I know that they can do better. They've done so much better in the past. They know how to handle these properties well. But they tend to do it more in an animated space or on TV. And if instead of, you know, having the CW turn into fucking the DC network, maybe they should just invest in, you know, doing some short form shows for all of these characters and then, you know, do like a special. Like that's what they do on the CW. It doesn't really work anymore, frankly, because the CW shows have run out of steam because they focus on all these romance subplots and characters dying and coming back every 2 fucking seconds. But when those shows started, they were actually pretty engaging. And if they could just do that again, make the season shorter, bring in some real talent, and kind of emulate what Netflix has been doing with the Defenders and stuff, maybe even throw a little bit more budget behind it, I could probably get on board, you know? Fucking go to HBO or Showtime or any of these people, stars, so anybody that, you know, is willing to help you create these shows. But DC's game plan is stupid. They keep fucking everything up. And it's just clear, like, you know, they had a million different movies planned, and I'm sure a good 60% of them have gotten scrapped at this point because they don't know how they're going to make them work. And, you know, I'm not going to get into plot specifics about Justice League. If you want to know more about why that movie's bad, just go watch the review. Because I feel like I've covered everything that needs to be said about that movie specifically. But I will say that it was just a fucking waste of time. And any goodwill that it has in it, it's not enough to carry a multi-billion-dollar universe based around these characters. And at this point, I don't think it ever will be. As stupid as it sounds, it's pretty sad because there's a lot of really good material that DC Comics has put out. And I feel like the characters are worth more than that. The actors deserve more than this. The audiences deserve more than this. And Justice League is just a fucking money-hungry cash grab that was just slapped together and just kind of tossed out there. That brings me to my final movie. I saved this one to be the very, very last one because I knew I was going to go on a tirade about it. Because I watched it last night. It came out at the very, very end of 2017. And this movie, if you know anything about me, is created by two people that I'm not a fan of. I don't know if I would say I loathe them, but it's very close. Everything that they've been putting out lately is awful. And the movie I'm talking about is Bright. It's another Netflix original. And Will Smith is a police officer, and he happens to get paired up with an orc who is also a police officer. The orc is a diversity hire. The best way to imagine it is if Lord of the Rings, it occurred thousands of years ago, and then that universe turned into ours in modern day. Which, it's fine. It sounds interesting enough. The problem is the creative forces behind this film. So it's directed by David Ayer, and David Ayer is another one of those people that I've talked about in the past. Of course, he did Suicide Squad, and of course, he contributed to the god-awfulness that is the DC cinematic universe. I had come up with this theory that he always does one really good movie and then one really bad movie. And it's gotten to that point in his career where I think he's just going to make bad movies until he dies or retires. Because this is his follow-up to Suicide Squad. This is the movie that he did after it. And it's worse than Suicide Squad. And a big part of that reason is the other half of this creative force. Max Landis. I could talk about this dude for hours, just shitting on everything about him. I really could. So I'm gonna try super hard not to do that. If you don't know who Max Landis is, he's John Landis' son. He essentially kickstarted his career as a screenwriter by working with Josh Trank, who did the Fantastic Four, and they made Chronicle, which by all rights it's an okay movie, I guess. But really, it was just kind of a stroke of luck because straight up, it's just Akira remade for an American audience with some shaky cam thrown in. It just happened to be at the right time in the right place because it was right when we were getting all these really successful superhero films and when that was kind of starting to become the norm. And it kickstarted kickstarted Max Landis' career as a screenwriter, and it kickstarted Josh Trank as a filmmaker. Josh Trank, fallen off the radar. I don't know if he's ever going to come back. After Fantastic Four, I really hope he doesn't. Max Landis, on the other hand, somehow he keeps getting movies made. I don't know how. I don't understand it. I don't understand the appeal of the things that he does. I don't like his writing. I don't think he actually knows how to write. I don't think he's ever taken classes. I don't think he's ever practiced writing. I don't think that he does drafts on his script. He just kind of comes up with these slightly clever ideas, but he never has any follow through. So like I said, he did Chronicle, he's done American Ultra, he did Bright, and he did Victor Frankenstein. And every single movie that this guy writes is peppered with unrealistic dialogue. It doesn't sound like a conversation. It sounds like somebody who watched a bunch of movies and sat down and said, I can write a screenplay. Oh, I can write a screenplay, no problem. What craft? What, like plot point, rising action, falling action, dramatic irony, stakes? Fuck that. I know what a good movie is. I've seen Pulp Fiction. Okay, I watched Training Day. All right, I know what a good movie is. Okay, I can sit down. I can write a movie. I'll bang one out for you right now. Bright is a concept that you would find in a 15-year-old's notebook after he got high on acid and watched Lord of the Rings. It's a mashup of Lord of the Rings and Bad Boys and every horrible 90s movie, or every horrible 90s buddy cop movie that you can think of. The production value is low, obviously, because it's a Netflix film. But the sad thing is it's probably the best production value in any of the Netflix originals, which is a problem because it's still not very good. The set pieces are dramatically small. The chemistry between Joel Edgerton and Will Smith is damn near non-existent. You talk about fucking one-dimensional characters. These characters have no personality whatsoever. Okay, the entire film is centered around these two partners that are kind of forced to be together. You know, that's like most buddy cop movies. It's two dudes forced to work together and overcome their differences to, you know, to get the job done, to fight a greater evil, what have you. And, you know, that's fine. The problem is that their personalities are solely based on Will Smith fucking hates that he's working with an orc, and he feels like he's gonna die because he's working with an orc. And the orc's personality is that he's an orc he's not your stereotypical orc. He's an orc cop. That's his whole personality, is that he's an orc cop. There's no depth to the characters. They're all surface level. Okay, and when you resolve the problems for those characters, they're nothing characters. Will Smith acts like he's fucking 20 years old in this movie. Okay, the dude is getting up there in age. And he's acting like he's fresh off of the first Bad Boys. Or, it feels like he just released Big Willie Style the other day. Trying to make Will Smith hip at this point is like trying to give your grandfather a makeover. It's like going, hey, Grandpa, I'm going to get you some skinny jeans. I'm going to go hit the gym with you. We're going to go to the bar. We're going to pick up some chicks. You know how it goes. You know, just we're just going to bro down for a little bit. It is so fundamentally flawed. You know, at this point in his career, you know, Will Smith, he still looks youthful, but you can tell very clearly that he's an older man. He should be playing like a mentorship role. Like, he should be a police captain. He should not be a fucking beat cop at, almost 50 years of fucking age or however old he is. It's not believable. Okay? But nothing about this movie is believable because it's set in this stupid fucking fantasy universe that was just lazily ripped off from Lord of the Rings. Every single thing in this movie is derivative. There's no original fiber in this movie. I just can't understand why out of their creative pool Netflix could make something like this. Out of everybody that they could possibly pull, every connection that they had, this is what they come up with. And this is supposed to be the thing that sells Netflix as a content creator, as somebody that can compete with the big studios. This is not promising. It doesn't know what the fuck it wants to be. It's part buddy cop comedy, part action film, part fantasy, with this weird fucking David Ayer realism style tacked on there, and forced humor. Because Max Landis cannot write humor, and David Ayer sure as shit can't direct humor. And so when you combine those two, you just got a movie where people just spout one-liners, and they're nothing. It's nothing but one-liners and jokes and poor taste. The worst part about this, though, is that it's a very clear social commentary about race relations. And as far as I can tell, orcs are supposed to represent black people, but there's still black people in this universe. But very clearly, orcs have been demonized and kind of forced into these ghettos and stuff like that. And it's offensively bad. Especially some of the lines of dialogue in this fucking movie. It pissed me off. There's not a lot of things that bother me. But this movie, I paused probably 20 or 30 times because I couldn't get through it without taking breaks just to keep it together, without throwing something at my fucking TV or smashing my PlayStation. This is lazy. This is lazy filmmaking right here. And this fucking movie's getting a sequel. And that's scary. I don't believe that we should make these mindless fucking films just for the sake of making them, Netflix can look at the numbers and say, oh, well, this was successful. They can sit there and do as much focus testing as they want. But, I mean, you look at all the official critic reviews and everybody is saying how bad this fucking movie is. And yet, they don't care. They're just going to keep shoving this shit down our throats forever. And that sounds like I'm getting on a soapbox, but I just mean it. What is the point of creating something if you're not going to put any effort into it? What is the point of sitting down and writing a movie and investing in a movie, spending hundreds and hundreds of hours making this thing, you just know it's a piece of dog shit ahead of time, but you still do it anyway? And it's either that these guys have no self-awareness, or they have a lot of self-awareness and they just don't care anymore. When you watch a traditionally bad movie, like The Room or Troll 2 or something like that, it wasn't their intention to set out and make a bad movie. But there's people that did not understand the concept of filmmaking. And those movies are watchable because at least it was like a good old college try. Whereas with Bright, it's these two dudes that somehow have kept putting out this fucking mediocre, bland garbage, and yet somehow they're still able to get work. I would not go see, if Tommy Wiseau put out 5 different fucking movies in the span of a decade, I would not go see those movies after seeing The Room. Right? What the fuck, man? I don't know what else to say about Bright. I've said a lot already. And like I said, I want to do a review for that one. So if you're watching on YouTube, be on the lookout for that. With that being said, thank you for tuning into the podcast. That wraps up the worst movies of 2017. These first 3 episodes have been, mostly based around this past year. I'm really going to start branching out now, tackling different topics, different things, now that I've knocked all those movies out of the way. Thought about doing a games and music list, but, it's I can only talk about stuff that I enjoy or dislike so much. I think I've said everything that I needed to say about 2017's media. Maybe there's a couple things I missed, but who knows? And that's, that covers it. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the next Line 'em Up podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube. Of course, if you want to listen to the podcast on the go, I'm always uploading these to SoundCloud. Line 'em Up podcast at soundcloud.com. Top of that, you can check me out on Twitter, Manuel_Elk, Manuel like on a skateboard, and Line 'em Up Productions at Facebook.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.